Britain built towns from nothing with steam and iron. Grand Victorian stations, branch lines threading through valleys, connecting villages to the wider world. But some of the towns those railways built have been quietly forgotten. The trains stopped, or the industries they served collapsed. And now you can buy a house in these places for less than it costs to rent a one-bedroom flat in London for a single year. I have gone through property data from the Land Registry, railway archives, Rightmove listings and local testimonies to bring you 10 towns across the United Kingdom where railway history and shockingly cheap house prices collide. Some of these places will surprise you. Hey, before we get into it, if you love looking back at the good old days of Britain, go check out my mate Albert at Albert's Old Britain. Trust me, he is bringing back memories you did not even know you had. Let us begin with the town that started it all. Not just for this list, but for railways everywhere on Earth. Shildon, in County Durham. In 1801, Shildon had a population of roughly 100 people. A hamlet. Barely a dot on the map. Then in 1825, the Stockton and Darlington Railway opened, and Shildon became the site of the first locomotive works in the world. The population exploded. Railway workers flooded in. Streets of terraced houses went up to accommodate them. By the mid-19th century, Shildon was an industrial powerhouse punching well above its weight. Today, Shildon tops the Zoopla affordability list with a house price to earnings ratio of just 1.36. The average price for a two-bedroom terraced house here sits at approximately £62,000. Three-bedroom terraces are listed from £45,000. To put that in perspective, the average house price across the United Kingdom is now above £268,000. The Locomotion Museum still stands in Shildon, built around the original 1825 station. A Grade II listed coach house from around 1831 survives nearby. It is believed to be the earliest surviving railway coach house anywhere in the world. Trains still run from Shildon to Bishop Auckland, Darlington and Middlesbrough. Walk through the town today and you will notice two things. First, the terraced rows have a uniformity to them that speaks of purpose. They were not built by chance. They were built by the railway company for the railway workers. Second, many of them have been quietly improved. New doors, tidy front gardens, fresh pointing on the brickwork. People here take care of what they have. The birthplace of the railway age has not disappeared. It has simply been overlooked. Travelling west to the Cumbrian coast, we find a story even more dramatic. Barrow-in-Furness. In 1843, Barrow comprised 143 people and 28 houses. It was a fishing hamlet at the tip of a peninsula surrounded by mudflats and not much else. 3 years later, the Furness Railway arrived. By 1881, the population had reached 47,259. The Furness Railway Company did not simply build a rail line. James Ramsden and the Duke of Devonshire envisioned Barrow as a rival to Liverpool. They invested in shipyards, steelworks, and grand civic buildings. The town earned a remarkable nickname, the English Chicago. That ambition is still visible in the architecture. Wide streets, handsome sandstone buildings, a town hall that belongs in a city 5 times the size. But the industries that justified all of this have largely gone. The cheapest postcode in the entire northwest of England falls within Barrow. Average prices around Ramsden Street sit at approximately £22,500. Some flats are valued at roughly £18,000, and yet Barrow is 30 minutes by car from Coniston Water and Windermere. The Lake District sits on the doorstep of one of the cheapest property markets in England. A terrace of 9 cottages, built in 1846 for Furness railway workers, still stands. The company requested them built as cheaply as possible, not to exceed £100 each. Even adjusting for 180 years of inflation, those cottages cost less to build than many of them sell for today. Remote workers and young couples priced out of the south are beginning to look twice at Barrow. The combination of coastal living, mountain access, and house prices under £50,000 is almost impossible to find anywhere else in the country. Heading east into Lincolnshire, we reach Grimsby. The railway did not just connect Grimsby to the rest of the country, it made Grimsby the largest fishing port in the world by the early 20th century. Trawlers packed the docks. Fish trains ran daily to Billingsgate and to cities the length of Britain. The smell of the sea and fresh catch carried through streets that hummed with work and money. Romans settled here. Vikings settled here. The town has over 2,000 years of recorded history. Then, the fishing industry collapsed through the 1990s and the early 2000s. Trawlers were decommissioned. Processing plants closed. The unemployment that followed depressed property prices, and they have never fully recovered. A 3-bedroom house in Grimsby can be found from around £65,000. The town centre postcode has an average property price of roughly £77,700. Set that against the national average of £268,000, and the gap is staggering. But Grimsby does not want sympathy. It has a busy town centre, a lively community, and a coastline that stretches for miles. The old docks are slowly being reimagined. There is talk of heritage projects and waterfront regeneration. The Casbah, the historic fishing quarter near the docks, still has its original ice factory and smokehouse buildings. Some of them are Grade 2 listed. These are not derelict ruins. They are solid red brick buildings with real architectural character, and they are beginning to attract attention from heritage groups and small business owners alike. What Grimsby does not have is house prices that reflect any of this. Everything discussed so far concerns towns that still have their railway connection. What follows involves places where the railway was taken away entirely, and with it, something that has never been replaced. In 1963, Dr. Richard Beeching published his report. It recommended the closure of 2,363 stations and 5,000 miles of track. That amounted to 55% of all stations and 30% of all route miles in Britain. 67,700 jobs were lost. The consequences were not just economic, they were social. Villages that had relied on the morning train for work, for hospital visits, for shopping, suddenly found themselves stranded. Car ownership was far from universal in the 1960s, particularly in working-class communities. Entire towns were effectively cut off from the national transport network overnight. The government has since acknowledged that restoring rail links to communities severed by the Beeching cuts has the potential to revitalise them. Over 60 years later, many are still waiting. Hornsey sits on the East Yorkshire coast. The Hull and Hornsey Railway once brought day trippers from Hull every summer weekend. Victorian and Edwardian families poured off the trains and onto the promenade. Hotels and guest houses thrived on the seasonal trade. The line closed in 1964. Today, the seafront guest houses stand quieter than they should. You can buy a 2-bedroom terrace in Hornsey from around £80,000. The national average is nearly 3.5 times that figure. The old railway line has been converted into the Hornsey Rail Trail, a walking and cycling path that winds through the countryside toward Hull. It is a lovely walk, but it is not a train. The promenade in winter is quiet, in a way that suggests absence rather than peace. Hornsey still has its Freeport shopping village, its pottery heritage, and a beach that rivals anything on the Yorkshire coast. Families visit in summer, and the town comes alive for a few months. But when the season ends, the emptiness returns. The houses that railway money built remain, handsome and affordable, and waiting. Crossing into South Wales, we reach the Rhondda Valley. The Taff Vale Railway and its branch lines once served dozens of mining communities, strung along the valley floor like beads on a string. Coal powered the empire, and the railway carried it out. Ferndale sits deep in the Rhondda. It has been named the most affordable town for families in Wales, with homes costing around 1.85 times dual average earnings. The average house price in the postcode covering Ferndale is approximately £103,000. The Welsh average stands at £210,000. The coal mines closed through the 1980s and the 1990s. The branch lines followed. What remains are tight terraced streets climbing the valley sides. Chapel buildings converted to other uses. A community with fierce pride and long memory. If you stand at the top of the valley and look down, the rows of terraces descend in neat, parallel lines toward the valley floor. It is one of the most distinctive landscapes in Britain. Notably, property prices here have recently started rising faster than the national average. Someone, it seems, is beginning to notice what Ferndale has to offer. Staying in South Wales, Blaenau Gwent tells a parallel story through steel rather than coal. The gov.wales steelworks dominated the town for over a century before closing in 2002. Thousands of jobs were lost in a single blow. The average home here costs around £139,000. Private rents sit at roughly £625 a month. The price-to-income ratio is just 3.8, among the best in the entire United Kingdom. In 2008, the railway to gov.wales was partially reopened. Trains now run to Cardiff. The steelworks site is being redeveloped. New retail spaces, a learning campus and community facilities have already risen on land that was once heavy industry. The heads of the valley's landscape surrounding the town is dramatic and genuinely beautiful. Green hillsides rise above stone terraces. Whether the cheap house prices here represent renewal or evidence of decades of neglect depends entirely on who you ask. Moving north into Scotland, Cumnock in East Ayrshire sits in rolling countryside that Robert Burns would recognise. The Glasgow and South Western Railway once served Cumnock and the surrounding mining communities. Coal declined through the 1980s and the 1990s, following the pattern seen across Britain. But the railway line survived. Trains still run to Kilmarnock in 20 minutes and to Glasgow in under an hour. Cumnock has been named the top town in Scotland for family affordability, with 3-bedroom homes costing around 1.68 times dual wages. 3-bedroom houses can be found from approximately £70,000. The town square is compact and well kept. Local shops still trade. There is a sense of quiet self-sufficiency here that larger towns have lost. This is Burns country, on a working rail line, with Glasgow within commuting distance. The question worth asking is not why Cumnock is cheap. It is why more people have not noticed. Everything until this point has been shaped by loss. What follows involves places where the story is visibly changing. Mansfield in Nottinghamshire holds a peculiar distinction. After the Beeching cuts closed its station in 1964, it became the largest town in Britain without a rail link. For 30 years, a town of tens of thousands had no train service whatsoever. Then the Robin Hood line reopened in the early 1990s, reconnecting Mansfield to Nottingham and Worksop. In 2023, the town received £25 million from the Levelling Up Fund for the Mansfield Connect Regeneration project. Plans now include 60 new properties near the iconic railway viaduct, a mix of general housing and later living accommodation designed specifically for older residents. Sherwood Forest is nearby. The town has a 700-year-old market. 3-bedroom houses remain widely available under £160,000. What makes Mansfield particularly interesting is the speed of change. New cafes and independent shops have begun opening in the town centre. The viaduct itself, a towering stone structure that dominates the skyline, is increasingly seen as an asset rather than a relic. Mansfield answers a question that the rest of this list has been quietly asking. What happens when a forgotten railway town gets its railway back? Crossing the Irish Sea to Northern Ireland, Larne in County Antrim sits on the coast where the ferry route to Stranraer gained vital strategic importance during the Second World War. The railway and ferry interchange was the town's lifeblood for generations. Larne town station still operates today, sitting beside a pond, with Larne Harbour just 3 minutes away. Trains run to Belfast in under an hour. The average house price across Northern Ireland is £196,000. In Larne, 3-bedroom properties can be found from approximately £120,000. This is a characterful coastal town with the glens of Antrim rising behind it. The harbour front has a rugged, windswept beauty that photographs well in any season. Fishing boats still dock here. The Antrim Coast Road, widely considered one of the most scenic drives in Europe, begins just minutes from the town centre. Many viewers on the mainland will not have considered Northern Ireland at all. That is precisely why it belongs on this list. We end in Lancashire. Burnley. The railway connected this mill town to Manchester and the wider cotton trade that made Lancashire the textile capital of the world. The mills are largely silent now, but the railway remains. Burnley offers some of the most affordable housing in the United Kingdom. Homes here cost roughly half the national average. Rail links to Manchester still run. The Lancashire countryside begins at the edge of town. Pendle Hill, that great brooding landmark visible for miles in every direction, watches over the rooftops. The old mill buildings that once housed looms and spinning frames are being converted into apartments and creative workspaces. The Leeds and Liverpool Canal runs through the town centre, lined with towpaths that are popular with runners, cyclists and dog walkers every morning of the week. Burnley does not need rescuing. It has transport, countryside, community, and houses that cost less than a deposit in most of southern England. The rest of the country simply has not been paying attention. There is a pattern here that stretches far beyond these 10 towns. Across the United Kingdom, communities built on rail and industry were left behind when both were taken away. The housing stock remained, but the economic purpose did not. Prices fell and kept falling until they settled at levels that now seem almost fictional compared to the southeast. But something is shifting. Remote work has loosened the grip that London and the major cities held over employment for decades. People are starting to ask different questions, not where is my office, but where can I afford to live well? These towns have been answering that question quietly for years. These places are real, the prices are real, and the history that shaped them is not finished yet. And do not forget, if you want a proper trip down memory lane, my mate Albert over at Albert's Old Britain has got you covered. Go show him some love.